and welcome to what is a rather unconventional way of introducing Cafe Cabaret. Tonight we'd like to present The Wrong Hero, and the title of the presentation for this evening on Cafe Cabaret is The Legion of Super Presidents. This will be a 30-minute show tonight, so as to leave you free to do other things. And so, once again, The Wrong Hero presents The Legion of Super Presidents. Good evening. I am not the wrong hero. I am actually some musician. But the wrong hero has taken over and is now going to, through me, dictate, as he always does, nothing new there, the contents of a dream he had, which should be enough to fill about 30 minutes worth of footage here on Cafe Cabaret. And so, without much further ado, let us present The Wrong Hero and the Legion of Super Presidents. In this dream, it seems as though the Legion of Super Presidents was formed when a mad scientist clones the presidents, that is, the deceased presidents, using various bits of tissue and whatnot, and who due to bioengineering, these cloned presidents grow ever more powerful, and they are summoned up as a last resort to protect America against the world, which has massed against it for some obscure reason, which you could probably readily guess. Washington is, of course, the first guy they pick to be the head of the Legion of Super Presidents, but of course his faults are magnified by this enhanced version of his clone, and so he succumbs to a combination of megalomania, and then he has a nervous breakdown. And so then Lincoln takes over, and though not without a struggle from John Adams, who seems to think he's next in line, and Jefferson and Teddy Roosevelt also seem to think that they'd be better leaders than Lincoln, who, quite frankly, they had never heard of. Well, Teddy had. Anyway, Lincoln leads the Legion of Super Presidents for a while, but he falls prey to his well-documented manic depressive tendencies, and John Adams takes over as the leader of the Legion of Super Presidents. But of course he's got these anti-democratic impulses that disincline him to listen to good advice from the other presidents, who are, of course, super-powered clones. And so he's also taken out of the running. And then Thomas Jefferson, of whom it was said by John F. Kennedy that never has such talent been seen in the White House before, except, of course, when Jefferson dined alone. Jefferson takes over, but he's caught up in a sex scandal, and his ideas are too radical and atheistic for the other presidents. And so the order of succession falters once again, and the remaining presidents squabble over who is to be the leader of the Legion of Super Presidents and who is to resist the massed might of the world, which has attempted to conquer the United States, that is, the rest of the world. And in other words, it's not the usual scenario of the United States trying to take over the world, but rather the world trying to take over the United States. So Andrew Jackson emerges as the next leader of the Legion of Super Presidents, but his cantankerous nature is ill-suited to this task. And so General Grant, the beloved General and later President Grant, gets a shot at it, but he gets drunk and they lock him up. And then Teddy Roosevelt finally gets his turn, but his rivalry with Taft does him in, and the Legion of Super Presidents say, no, no, we don't want him as our leader. Wrong Roosevelt. Let's have Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And but then all the other presidents say, oh, no, no, we're appalled by his duplicitousness. And they basically blame him for getting them into the mess that they're in. Like, you're the one who made America so strong that she became easy prey for the massed might of the world to strive against us. And so they get rid of FDR, and then Truman takes over for a little while, but he's not very popular, and he soon passes on. And then there's a long deadlock which emerges, and America succumbs to its foes because the Legion of Super Presidents can't get it together to elect a leader among their kind. And finally, just when it looks like the entire country will be taken over by the massed might of the world against it, President Polk comes to the rescue. And with his incredibly efficient manner, remember now, he's the man who basically annexed Mexico and California and resolved the boundary dispute, the 54-40 or fight issue, and did all sorts of other groovy stuff. But you know, he retires after one term, and then they somehow, for some reason, they decide to elect perhaps the weakest of their number, namely Warren Gamaliel Harding, and he falters. He fumbles, actually, and then they elect JFK, and he bumbles, and then LBJ takes the reins, and he stumbles, and then Nixon takes over, and of course, with the help of Super K, Henry Kissinger manages to once again beat back America's foes. Well, that's the end of the first part. The second part, we find a situation where the United States, although eternally in debt to their Legion of Super Presidents, decides that they're too powerful to be kept around. And so the Legion of Super Presidents are left, they're sent off to fight the alternate presidents of Earth 2, that is a parallel world to our Earth. And the battle begins anew in a world in where the 13 colonies are still British. The South won the Civil War, and apartheid reigns in the states of the old Confederacy, which of course, as you're probably all familiar, include North and South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, and others that I can't recall offhand. And so this is a Earth 2, the world in which the 13 original colonies, which include Rhode Island, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York, but not Maine or Vermont. Now remember, Vermont was 14th, and Maine, I believe, was 15th. Now I guess the original 13 colonies were, well, part of the old Confederacy was also part of the 13 original colonies. So let's just say everything north of the Mason-Dixon line, which was part of the original 13 colonies, including Vermont and Maine, let's just throw them in, are still dominated by Great Britain. The South is, in fact, an independent country, and the Port of New York is a city-state. Alaska belongs to Russia. Hawaii belongs to Japan. Cuba and South America are slave states belonging to the American South. The Louisiana Purchase belongs to France, and only a slender patch of land from western Pennsylvania to New Orleans, which follows the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, is the United States as we know it. And the task that the super presidents have been given on this alternate world is to fight to unite the sparring factions of the divided United States, including Spanish Florida, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, which of course belonged to Mexico, and independent Texas. And Maryland is a wasteland because the British had the atomic bomb during the War of 1812. Washington, D.C. is still a swamp since there was no need for a federal capital. Philadelphia is the capital of the provisional United States, even though it's non-contiguous with the portion of the real United States which runs from western Pennsylvania along the Ohio and down the Mississippi all the way to New Orleans. Mayor Frank Rizzo is the leader of this provisional United States and runs it from the non-contiguous portion of it which is centered in Philadelphia. Chicago is a city-state run by Mayor Daley. William Randolph Hearst controls a California fiefdom, which corresponds to Xanadu in the Orson Welles film Citizen Kane. Canada is a Chinese satellite. Mexico belongs in part to Spain. The Legion of Super Presidents are forced to make their headquarters in tiny Guam. Things look dark until Lincoln, Washington, Grant, Teddy Roosevelt, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt appear, with Herbert Hoover in charge of provisioning and Woodrow Wilson as chief propagandist, with Ronald Reagan as his understudy. So, and then of course what happens is the entire United States is reunited all over again, and things are soon not very much different on this alternate Earth as they are in the regular world. And so, with a cry of "Our work is done," the Legion of Super Presidents are free to return to the land of their birth, or so they think, because in Part 3, instead of being sent back home, the Legion of Super Presidents are summoned to an alternate computer world where cyberspace aliens plot to dominate. Many of these members of the Legion of Super Presidents are utterly vanquished in a series of cruel computer games like Blockade, until finally Earth 1, Earth 2, and Earth 3 are under domination by aliens from cyberspace. Now, I know what you're saying right now. You're saying, "Jeepers, what an imagination this guy has. What dope has he been smoking anyway?" Well, like I said, it's all a dream, and I have nothing to do with it, really. It's the collective unconscious which is being channeled through me in my dream. So in Part 4, and I realize that Parts 3 and 4 are kind of skimpy on the ground, but isn't that just the way? You get a good start in Part 1, you build on it in Part 2, Part 3 is kind of but keep it short, keep it simple, and then Part 4, you don't know what to do. I mean, you know how it's going to end, but you're just not too sure about Part 4. So what do? Do you cannibalize part of Part 5 and make it part of Part 4 in order to flesh it out a little? Well, I prefer to just stick with the original organic arrangement of the 5 dreams of the Legion of Super Presidents. So, let's see. Part 4 concerns the history of the alien presidents, including, of course, the wrong hero, up until a solar cataclysm which makes the Earth, all the Earths go up in flames. Only a few presidents and their families escape to form a new colony on now habitable Neptune, which is where the story actually begins and ends, with squabbling presidential kin quarreling over their prerogatives. But in part 5, it all turns out to be a series of comic books in black and white put out by a small-run independent company, of which the narrator of this tale has the only extant copies. The genius, some genius who thought up the concept of the Legion of Super Presidents, gave us a lot of presidents but relatively little in the way of superheroics. Sure, Lincoln splits a few rails here and there, and Teddy Roosevelt shoots or refuses to shoot a bear cub chained to a stake, but where's the slam-bang, duke-it-out, fist-flying, grinning warrior action? Never has $50 been worse spent. Issues number 1 through 25, costing $2 each. Now, I particularly liked the issues titled Wilson's Best Pal, Colonel Wood, and Kennedy's Marilyn Monroe Doctrine, which of course was the lead story in the sole spin-off issue entitled The Adventures of John F. Kennedy's Girlfriend, Marilyn Monroe. And I liked the little chapters on Betsy Ross and Mae West, and I particularly enjoyed the story of Nixon City and Tales of G-Man Hoover. But you know, there are just so many trite plot twists in this series of action adventures centered around the presidents, which strove to be educational and action-filled, but which was really neither. I mean, you have the trite plot twist in which the wife slash girlfriend slash best friend slash sibling of the hero also gains superpowers, albeit temporarily, as in the story Super Bess in the Truman segment. Or you have the trite plot twist in which the wife, girlfriend, best friend, sibling of the hero gains superpowers in a dream, as in the story Dean Acheson, or as part of a what-if imaginary story like Eleanor the First, Queen of the United States. Now, too much time is spent devoted to backstories featuring peripheral characters like young Mighty Joe McCarthy and Daniel Webster to the rescue and Walter Winchell died for our sins. And now the plots of these comic books began relatively straightforwardly, but soon veered from the merely improbable to the utterly fantastical. And yet, for all their flaws, and there are many, this fascinating saga merits closer inquiry. And so, here follows a blow-by-blow account of the 25-issue run of the maxi series, The Legion of Super Presidents, which takes place, of course, in Earth 1 of the United States of America, as well as on Earth Washington, Earth Lincoln, and Earth Nixon. Now, I'm not sure we'll have time to go through all 25 issues, but basically what happens is it all begins on Neptune with the presidents and their squabbling kin, and proceeds from there. Well, basically, and I said that word a lot, I realize, but basically Washington's there, arguing with his wife, saying stuff like, just because they have wooden teeth and they accumulate bacteria doesn't mean I shouldn't be allowed to kiss you. And besides, my station is new. I walk on untrodden ground, says Washington, and his wife, of course, says, go on with you. You're a tin-horn chiseler, you and your swill the planters with bumbo. So, and there's John Adams, and boy, what a creepy-looking guy. And, you know, George Washington's up there going, well, you know, I could have had a third term, but I figured it was time to give someone else a chance, and who better than the vice president who, in a long tradition of vice presidents, being the first of the vice presidents. He's a just total schlub. And then they're all arguing among each other. It's like, Jefferson, Jefferson, what an asshole you were. Why couldn't you keep your hands off the slave wenches? Oh, that's a lie, that's a lie. It wasn't me. It was some relative of mine, also named Thomas Jefferson. Oh, yeah, right. Next you're going to be saying it was your evil twin. So Jefferson is sort of like shunted off to the side. The super presidents don't really want him as their leader. And so then James Madison steps up. It's like, James Madison, who needs you? Okay, so you're the father of the Constitution, and you wrote the Bill of Rights, and your wife's a real piece of cake, Dolly Madison. Yeah, what a gal. Ooh-wee. But what else are you good for? Not much. You're pretty boring, actually. And James Monroe, it's like, okay, so you got the Monroe Doctrine, big deal. What else are you known for? Nothing. John Quincy Adams? Oh, so you're John Adams' boy, eh? Well, doesn't make you king of the earth. Forget you. You're just a bad dream. Andrew Jackson. And it's like, Old Hickory. Hey, an illiterate tailor, just what we need for president here. Yeah, no, I don't think we'll elect him our leader. See, they're all squabbling among themselves, trying to decide who's going to be the leader of the Legion of Super Presidents. Martin Van Buren. God, I don't know, it wouldn't do much for our image to like have a bald man, a baldy, a bald head. Hey, cue ball, we don't want you as our president. John Tyler. It's like, geez, you were born in a log cabin. What a distinction. Cry yai. I mean, I was born in a pigsty. Does that make me eligible to be leader of the Legion of Super Presidents? And James Polk. Good man, But, he's, aside from beating Henry Clay, and keeping all his campaign promises, I mean, Mexico, California, Oregon, and of course the Polk Doctrine, which nobody remembers, which the United States cannot in silence permit any European interference in the American continent. And it's like, hey, says Monroe, that was my idea. You're trying to steal it. And then Zachary Taylor, first in a long line of mediocre presidents. It's like, no experience in statecraft, so why do we have to elect him our leader of the Legion of Super Presidents? We don't. Screw you. Millard Fillmore. Ho-hum. Even the name makes me want to yawn. Franklin Pierce. Guy from New Hampshire. That alone would be enough to disqualify him from being our leader. No thanks. James Buchanan. The bachelor president from Pennsylvania. And quite a pudgy little butterball, too. Abraham Lincoln. Manic Depressive. Say no more. Andrew Johnson. Drunken Tailor. Say no more. Ulysses S. Grant. Drunken cigar-smoking general. Say no more. Rutherford B. Hayes. Cheated Tilden out of the race. Say no more. Chester A. Arthur. Irreparably corrupt collector of the port of New York. Who needs him? Grover Cleveland. What a name. Oh, father than an illegitimate child. Great. Benjamin Harrison. Now what in the hell kind of name is that? And besides, wasn't he William Henry Harrison's grandson? No nepotism around here. Grover Cleveland again. Doesn't this guy know when to quit? William McKinley. He's just a tool of that political boss Mark Hanna of Ohio. Theodore Roosevelt. A sawed-off little runt who thinks he's far more important than he actually is. William Howard Taft. 2 words. Fat man. Woodrow Wilson. Nah, I don't know. Somehow, having a guy named Woody be our leader wasn't my idea of a good time. And as you see, the presidents are all squabbling among themselves, and being as how this is the modern age and all, they can't really, accept a president who was not born in the 20th century. So Warren G. Harding, although he is thought to be a very good-looking man, doesn't quite stand the gaffe, and silent Calvin Coolidge doesn't really turn them on, and not much in the way of a charismatic cult leader type figure. So he too goes by the wayside. Say, how long is this thing supposed to be anyway? Here I thought this was a 30-minute tape. I can't really tell how long this tape is. Well, let's see, according to this, I have about 10 minutes left. Well, in any event, so here we are, having fun with Elvis on stage. So anyway, yeah, Calvin Coolidge, he's not really considered to be much of a firecracker. So to reduce war taxes is to give every home a better chance. That was his scintillating contribution to the great presidential rhetoric. Thrifty, taciturn, gifted with native Yankee wit, Coolidge brought integrity and little else to the White House. There is no right to strike against the public safety by anybody, anywhere, at any time. For that statement, made during the 1919 Boston police strike, he became widely acclaimed, basically because he used the phrase, "There is no right to strike against the public safety by anybody, anywhere, at any time." See, that repetition, that really draws them in. And of course, you know, he was responsible for the world-famous Kellogg-Briand Pact, or Briand Pact, which sounds like a very exotic type of cereal. And jeepers, that reminds me. I had a thought, but now it's slipped my mind. I guess I'm just a little confused is all, and my confusion will probably end once this tape has also ended. So anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, the Legion of Superheroes. I'm sorry, the Legion of Super Presidents. Oh geez, now I'm in trouble. Now you know where I got the idea. Basically, it's a combination of the Legion of Super Elements and the Legion of the Metal Men and the Legion of Superheroes and you know, Secret Wars Parts 1 and 2 and that stupid DC thing they did, whatever it was called, the Death of the DC Universe or whatever that. Oh God, I don't even remember what they called it. But I guess I should talk a little bit more, just as a sort of interregnum or brief digression. During the 80s, Marvel Comics and DC Comics sort of decided to have these mini-series which ran on for great length. I think Marvel actually had 24 or 25 issues of Secret Wars Parts 1 and 2. Secret Wars Part 1 wasn't very good. Secret Wars Part 2, which everybody thought would be lousy, was actually great. And the DC version of that, which just escapes me right now, is only principally notable in clearing out some of the deadwood that nobody really needed to have cleared out in the first place, either because A, they had forgotten about the obscure heroes who met their doom, or B, the heroes weren't hurting anybody, they weren't being actively harmful or destroying DC's reputation, or C, they didn't really need to be killed off in the first place. A good example of A, I suppose, would be, oh, I don't know, whoever got killed off, Pete Ross, you know, the boy who knows Superboy's secret identity. And an example of B would be Supergirl, who they killed. They made a big deal out of killing her, but then she came back somehow. And then C would be the Flash, perfectly good character. Didn't have to kill him off, but they did anyway. And they replaced him with Kid Flash, making it Flash the Third. since there was the 40s Golden Age Flash, and there was the Silver Age Flash that we all knew and loved, Barry Allen, and then there was Kid Flash, Wally West, who, of course, what an inane notion anyway, Kid Flash, and so he became the new Flash, Flash number 3. And what's really weird is, gee, I forget offhand what the origin of the Golden Age Flash was, but it was something idiotic. And supposedly, the Silver Age Flash was in the police lab, and lightning hit a bunch of chemicals and splashed over him and made him super fast, but it actually turned out that some creepy-looking alien did it, and made it look like that 1 in a million thing had happened. But then, when Barry Allen, Flash number 2, took Kid Flash, Wally West, Flash number 3, his nephew, to reenact it, somehow the same thing happened again, and Wally West was endowed with super speed. Oh, it's all too complicated. But anyway, they killed off the Flash, and that kind of sucked. They didn't have to do that. Not that the Flash was any great shakes as a character. I mean, super speed, ho-hum. I mean, like, why didn't the guy's legs fall off or something if he was that fast? His legs would get ahead of him. I guess his whole body must have vibrated. And of course, the tired old comparison between a tornado driving a straw through a tree and the Flash being able to rearrange his molecular structure in such a way that he could walk through walls, a power even Superman doesn't have. They had to like, really jazz up his powers. I mean, mere super speed alone wasn't good enough to save the Marvel timely Golden Age character, the Wizard, from extinction. The Wizard's origin was even more inane than that of the Flash. Apparently he was injected with mongoose blood, which made him super fast, which is really going some. Anyway, back to the Legion of Super Presidents. Oh, but you know what? Also, I have to tell you that there was a cartoon show on in the 1960s called Super President, and nobody seems to have ever seen this except myself. And let me see if I can find the description of it. One moment, please. Well, I'm having difficulty locating the book, but I think it's right around here somewhere. It's in a book called Kids TV, the first 25 years, and I'll bet it's in here. No, wait, 206 and 231. So, just to document this, Super President, Saturday, 9:30 to 10 a.m. NBC. Debut, 9/16/67. Cancellation, 9/14/68. Supplier, DePatie Freeling Enterprises. Voices, James Norcross, Paul Frees. Richard Vance, Dawes Butler. Of course, Dawes Butler is the voice of Huckleberry Hound as well, and many others. James Norcross, the President of the United States, possessed a number of unique powers which he had acquired as a result of a cosmic storm. Leaping into action as Super President, he's fought the most cunning of Washington, D.C.'s criminals. He was on a never-ending mission for justice and the American way. Oh, okay. That's weird. See, they have a picture here. Not that we can show you that, because it's under copyright, and we're not permitted to. Ha, that's a laugh. Let's see. 231. Well, yes, DePatie Freeling also produced the Super Six. A Super Six, a Super Six. Here comes the Grump and the Hound Cats, as well as, of course, the beloved Pink Panther. Let's see, the Super Six. What the hell does it say about them? Boy, I'm getting sidetracked here. 186. What can I tell you about the Super Six? Oh God, Super Boing, the Brothers Matzo Riley, Captain Whammy, Magnet Man, Elevator Man, Super Scuba, and Granite Man. Oh man, that is pretty fucking lame. Excuse my language here. But anyway, you get the idea. The Super Six, Super President, right? And it had this theme song, Super President, dun, 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 born in outer space during a cosmic storm. He later became President of the United States, and as Super President, fought the enemies of the United States. And it's like, well, if he were born in outer space, he would be ineligible to be president because the Constitution, because the one of the amendments says that the president must be born in the continental United States or Hawaii or Alaska or one of the territories or something. I mean, I know there's some sort of provision. And I asked my mother about this, and she said, well, why don't you write him and ask him? Typically helpful. I don't want to take the effort to write him and ask him. I demand immediate gratification. So anyway, yeah, this whole dream comes out of the superhero war, the Secret Wars, and the Legion of Superheroes, and the Metal Men, and Super President, and all this stuff. What a strange dream. Anyway, there they are, all on Neptune, arguing with each other, and it's like, Hoover, well, you should let me run things, you know. I was the first president born west of the Mississippi River. And President Wilson selected me as food administrator during World War I. I headed the Commission for the Relief of Belgium, and so forth and on. And I carried 5 states below the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah, but you presided over the worst depression in our history. Not just a panic, like the panic of 1987. No, a full-blown depression. And we had to have Frankie Delano Roosevelt come in. Well, my name is Franklin, but you can call me Frankie. Just so long as there isn't any other hanky-panky. And, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, what do you say about a president who died? Of course, he would be like the Professor Xavier of the X-Men, the genius with telepathy who presides from a wheelchair over his super-powered cohorts or charges, or call them what you will. A date which will live in infamy. It's like, well, cool. Now, when is that again? Monday, December 8th, 1941. A date that will live in infamy. Well, then Harry S. Truman, from farm boy to president, just like one of the other presidents. You know, Mr. President 1880, the guy that got shot, the one who everybody always forgets. Not Chester Arthur, the other guy. Garfield? Yeah. Garfield, from canal boy to president. No, wait a minute. Hayes was the guy in 1880. One was Garfield. Boy, it's so tough keeping these things straight. That's funny. Garfield doesn't seem to be in here at all. So obscure, he was even forgotten by the other super presidents. James Abram Garfield. He is supposed to be in here somewhere. Let's see. Chet Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, Grover Cleveland again, William McKinley. Where's Garfield? That would be a good premise for a TV show. Where's Garfield? Andrew Johnson. Geez. Well, anyway, I think Garfield was a canal boy, whatever the hell that is. And so Harry Truman is in a long tradition of men of humble origin who rise to the highest honor in the land. Some honor. I mean, if you're going to be a corporate CEO, you might as well get paid millions of dollars instead of a measly 200,000 and all of the soft ice cream you can eat. It doesn't sound to me like a very wise career move. I mean, once you've been president, where to go from there? I mean, your active life is over. Anything you do is an anticlimax. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I'd take the job if it was offered to me, which it would never be offered, of course, but that's not the point. The point is not whether the job would be offered to me, but rather whether I would take it were it to be offered me. And I think the answer to that would have to be a big fat no. No, I don't want your stinking presidency, you filthy United States vermin. I mean, I have better things to do with my time than to be constantly worrying about Cyprus or Israel or Zaire or Gambia or some other little dipshit country like Liechtenstein, which sounds to me like something they serve in a Chinese restaurant after the end of the meal, or Luxembourg or Monaco or Nauru or East Timor. With a name like East Timor, it's no wonder that Indonesia bats it around like a cat playing with a ball of yarn. Now, if they call themselves something like Tough Land or, I don't know, Rough and Tough Topia or something, then maybe people would leave them alone. And it's similar. It's just like Afghanistan. If Afghanistan called itself something like Richland or Oilberg or something, then we'd be flocking to defend it against the Russians. But no, it's just Afghanistan. What do you think of? Blankets, fancy dogs, and maybe if you're lucky and you've seen the film, The Man Who Would Be King. That's what you think of when you think Afghanistan. Oh, now they have that faction. What's it called? Oh, and I haven't really been following it very closely. The Tabul or the Tabuli or whatever the hell. The Talin or Tamin. It sounds like something out of Tolkien, whatever it is. Anyway, now we get to the presidents within living memory, more or less. Dwight D. Eisenhower, another bald head. We don't want a baldo heading us up, I mean, what the hell with that? We want some guy with a full head of hair. Someone like the ever-charismatic JFK. Yeah, he can be our leader. He can lead us to the New Jerusalem. Gesundheit. And so they're all squabbling among themselves, and it's like JFK says, well, I say we make it be a competition as to which president has the prettiest wife. And, of course, I would win hands down. No disrespect to Dolly Madison, but quite frankly, my wife was so pretty. She married a Greek billionaire right after I got shot. So there was that. And but then, they're all saying, well, Ike, Ike's out of the running because he's old and he's bald and whatnot. And JFK's out of the running because, well, if you're so great, how come they got so mad at you down in Texas that they blew your head off, huh? And LBJ, let's not talk about LBJ. If you're so great, how come you can't even protect the president when he comes and visits your home state? Well, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do it. Well, it weren't me. I wasn't there. Oh, I was there, but pretty fishy, LBJ. Well, it wasn't my part of Texas anyway. My people are from East Texas, and Dallas, of course, that's not East Texas at all. It's like, oh, no. Sorry, LBJ. And it's like, what really screwed LBJ was the fact that Bobby Kennedy was lurking around going, you killed my brother. It's like the Wicked Witch. You killed my sister, the Wicked Witch of the East. Now I'll get you, my pretty... Well, too bad what happened to Bobby. But, then there's Nixon. Adlai Stevenson spoke of Nixon Land, a place which is founded on paranoia and secrecy. A very telling prophecy of what Nixon was to make of this country once, in fact, he did become president 8 years after he felt he had rightly been cheated out of the presidency. And then we zap through. The presidents are all arguing with each other. Nixon, Nixon, you know, Harry Truman. It's like, I wouldn't trust that bastard further than I could throw him. And so then Ford, genial, good-natured Ford. No thanks. We don't want him. No, he can't be the leader of the Legion of Super Presidents. How about Ronald Reagan? No, we don't want him either. Besides, we can't clone him because he's still alive. And so is Ford, for that matter. No, I think we're going to have to, let's see, we can't do Bush because he's still alive, and we can't do Clinton because he's still alive. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just forget this whole Legion of Super Presidents thing and go back to where we came from. Okay, the end. And this ends my presentation of the Legion of Super Presidents. And I hope that my babbling hasn't annoyed you too much. But it's been fun. Well, this has been The Wrong Hero. You have been tuned to Cafe Cabaret. Please tune in next week when we present Postmodern Parables by the inimitable Wrong Hero. And thank you for tuning in to Cafe Cabaret.